All right, so today we're going to learn just a little bit more about aperture priority. We're going to climb the ladder and take another step up, okay? So let's go.
Click, 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 click and a pick it. Click, 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 click and a pick it. Click, 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 click and a pick it. Click, click, click.
Okay, so aperture is a hole or opening through which light passes through. So if this were your lens, this coffee cup, if this were your lens, this would be the opening through which the light would come through to the back of your sensor in the back. Now, the opening is called an f-stop number opening. The bigger the opening, the smaller the number, okay? The smaller the number, the bigger the opening, the more light that goes through, okay? And that would be considered an f-stop number. So the smaller f-stop numbers, say f1, f1.2, f1.3, those numbers let in a lot of light, okay? Now, when the numbers get larger, the opening starts to close, and then it gets very small, okay? But the odd thing is the numbers increase, okay? And less light gets into your lens. All right. Now this lens is a fixed focal length lens. Here it tells us the f-stop is 1.8. So that is a very large opening. And the 50 means that the lens is a 50 millimeter lens. Now the benefit to having a large opening like this is you can work in low light situations with no flash and get a very clean shot with very little grain. So that's why we want lenses with larger openings. But you're gonna pay for it. They're not inexpensive. Most of the lenses that have the smaller number f-stops that let in the light, they're high quality, high end lenses. Now, if you look at the opening of the lens, the hole is from here to here. But if we shine a light down into the center, the opening looks very small because the gray aperture blades are covering the opening. And so the aperture blades control how much light goes in and how much light comes out. So the smaller the hole, the higher the number. The bigger the hole, the smaller the number. Now, so this is our Canon lens. It's an 18 to 135 millimeter. Okay, it's a zoom lens. So it goes from 18 all the way up to 135 on the zoom. And this lens is, let's see if it shows it on here. Somewhere on here it'll say. Okay, usually it'll have a spot. Alright, so this tells us in here on the lens what it is. It's f-stop 3.5 to 5.6. So what that means, when it's not zoomed out, it has a larger opening. It's running at 3.5. Okay, so the hole is pretty large. But once the zoom goes out, at the maximum zoom, we're at 5.6. That's the f-stop, 5.6 at 135 millimeters. So it's not letting in as much light, and you're not going to get very good low light shots with this lens compared to a lens that has an f-stop of 1.8, which is going to let in a lot more light. So this is not a great low light lens. It's a great lens when the light is good and average, but once you get below average, forget it. Your shots are going to look very grainy. You're going to have a hard time getting good shots with this lens in bad light. Alright, so this lens is an f-stop 2.8 Sony lens with a 70 to 200 focal range. That's the millimeter focal range. Now, the beauty of this lens is that if you're at f2.8 at 70 millimeter and you extend it all the way out to 200, you're still at 2.8. That's how this glass was designed. It was designed to let in the maximum amount of light from 70 millimeters all the way up to 200 millimeters. Then the only drawback is you're going to pay a ton of money for these lenses. They're not cheap lenses. So, but what you get is outstanding performance and value for the money. All right, so aperture priority is pretty important because it lets us know how much light is coming in through the lens and hitting that sensor. Now, the better the lens, the larger the opening, the more money you're going to spend. Now, what I recommend is not using a flash, so you know how much light your lenses are letting in. You know the usable range of each lens and what you can get away with before you have to start adding light. So that's kind of why I'm trying to get you to do this without light, all right? So just think of your f-stop. The bigger the opening, the smaller the number. The smaller the opening, the bigger the number, okay? And if you buy a zoom lens, try to find a zoom lens with the lowest f-stop numbers, a lens that will let in the most light, and chances are those are going to be the most expensive lenses. For example, that Sony, if I remember right, that's over a $3,000 lens. But if you're going to do sports and action and you need to capture movement in low light with no flash, you've got to have that lens. There's really no substitute for that, okay? So push your lenses as far as you can in all the different low light situations and see what your lenses and what your settings can get away with before you ever have to add any light. That's why we're doing this with no flash, okay? All right, so if I've helped you, throw me a like, click subscribe, and let's grow together.